I did this off of the top of my head. I wrote down the notes, but I did it the notes off the top of my head. I am a true crime and a professional wrestling fan, so I thought this would be good for me to do. I also have requested it to a couple other podcasts that I listen to of true crime. Chris Benoit was a professional wrestler who killed his wife on Friday and his 7-year-old son on Saturday, snapping his neck while using his gym equipment on the Sunday. Bibles were found near them, left by Chris, or obviously because he couldn't near him in the room. Wikipedia announced the family's death before anybody knew. I think a fan account did too, but I'm not 100% sure of that. Chris and Nancy almost got divorced, but tried to make it work. They were talking about them having another child together. Chris's wrestling hero was the Dynamite Kid who used a flying headbutt, which Chris adopted, causing head injuries. Chris's brain was an 80-year-old Alzheimer's patient at the time of his death, and his heart was 10 times too big. He would be dead within the next year if he had not committed these acts. A year and a half earlier, Chris's best friend and fellow wrestler Eddie Guerrero passed away due to heart failure. Chris was never the same, as he wrote in his journals, as we would be aware of later. Chris sent Eddie's nephew, Chavo Guerrero, also a wrestler, a text saying the dogs are in the back and the side door is open. This message went out to many, unbeknownst to Chavo at the time. Chavo thought nothing of it and went back to sleep, thinking he'd be picking up Chris from the airport in a few hours. The last time these two talked on the phone, Chris put emphasis in the "I love you" to Chavo Guerrero. Chavo waited, but Chris never showed up. With Chris never showing up, his match still had to go on. Chris was scheduled to face CM Punk for the vacant ECW title at the Night of Champions. It might have been the Vengeance Night of Champions, but I don't remember that to be 100% sure. Chris ended up being replaced by Johnny Nitro, better known as John Morrison and Johnny Elite. These are the two participants that would be battling for the ECW title that night. Johnny Nitro would win and later on go on to change his name to John Morrison. The WWE would find out uh, about this and announce it on Monday Night Raw, where they did a tribute show because they thought it was the right thing to do on Monday Night Raw. WWE did not know the circumstances of the death at this time. WWE would find out the next day on Tuesday, where the boss, Mr. McMahon, Mr. Vincent McMahon, would kayfabe return from the dead to announce WWE will never mention Chris Benoit again. Although I personally have seen his arm in a Money in the Bank replay, Kane slanted. I'm pretty sure that was his arm, and it flips from time to time. Let's focus on one picture at a time. Eddie Guerrero, Dean Malenko, and Chris Benoit were the three amigos, a move used by Chavo Guerrero and Sasha Banks to this day. Dean Malenko, unfortunately, is the only one left in that faction. In the SmackDown vs. Raw 2007 game, which you can see the picture on the right, the last game that Chris was in, The Undertaker said, "Your grieving family will have no one to blame but you." And we can only say that that was so foreshadowing. Chris met Nancy in WCW World Championship Wrestling. World Championship Wrestling. Yes, I was right. I thought I was wrong for a second. Where they were romantically involved on stage by Nancy's then husband, Kevin Sullivan, who was a writer who put them together. It is a theory that Kevin did all of this, but I do not personally believe it. Chris Benoit is survived by his son, David, who would like to get into the wrestling business using the name Chris Benoit. Of course, David is from a different mother than Daniel was. Dark Side of the Ring did a two-part episode on this, and David was interviewed by Chris Van Vliet podcast for some good more sources on this subject. If you ever wondered what it would look like if Chris Benoit went to the Hall of Fame, here it is. Because this is the only time you're going to see it. Because he will never go into the WWE Hall of Fame because of his actions. But there is one good thing, if there is any good from this, is that every sport started to take concussion protocols more seriously. And I believe the WWE was once again looked into for steroid use. And that is the story of the tragic murder of Nancy and Daniel Benoit and the suicide of Chris Benoit. All images were found on Google and may be copyrighted of the WWE. My name is Smart Guy Moment Hall of Famer PD Nice, and you should check out their podcast because that's the podcast I listen to the most for my wrestling. You can also find me at Twitter at PD Nice WWE, and I will see you for the SummerSlam predictions. Until then, stay nice for disability rights.